Hello and welcome back to Reddit League Season 7 for the third show this season, where we'll be talking about weeks 7 to 9. And today, with me to talk about Division 4 and Division 3 is Carpographer. Hello, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing great. How are you today?
Tired, but otherwise good. But yep, that's good to hear. And today I'm also joined by Totoradio for Division
Hi.
1 and 2. Hello. How are you doing?
Great. Great.
All right, nice. Nice to have you here. And to get us started with, we'll be talking about Reddit League next. Unfortunately, for this week, I was just super busy in general and couldn't quite make it happen to get a guest for Division 5. So I'll be going through that on my own. There'll be no graphics apart from the table as well, but we'll make do. And we'll start with Reddit League next. And you can see the table right there. 9 out of the 11 weeks are gone now, which means just 2 weeks left. I guess technically there's now a maximum of 50,000 points on offer. So if you're currently below 13th in the table, that first spot is off the cards. And down to 14th, there is still a theoretical possibility of making it to the top 3. Realistically, with what we're looking at here and with, knowing that map 11 is probably not going to make much of a difference, it is very likely that our current top 3 will stay our top 3 towards the end of the season as well. Although, you can never really be too sure with Norway. Can't afford to drop the ball too badly. But yeah, once again, it's been an incredibly interesting Reddit League next season. And while we do have a little bit of a gap between the top 3 and, the people further behind, it has been very, very close from there. Just look at, for example, that gap from 5th place down to 10th place. That's about 5,000 points there. That's nothing over the course of a whole season. And yeah, so far, so good for those 3 at the top. Of course, they still have to send in their mandatory recording, at least 2 of them. So who knows what happens if they don't? I'm not sure yet. I'll decide afterwards. But it certainly wouldn't be good if they didn't. Anyway, it was also nice to see just generally like lots of different people finishing in the top 3 over different seeds. I think there's been 12 people who have at least had 1 seed where they finished in the top 3, which is very nice to see and just shows a good diversity as well. All right, moving on to Division 5B, and as I said, no graphics for any picks, but yeah, we'll just get straight into the table. I'll tell you something about those results from the previous 3 weeks as well, of course. In week 7 for Division 5B, we had a total of 1 perfect score, which was Apfeloxid, currently only 6th in the table, as you can see right there. But he did have a great week there with a 25k against Erikmi. Mr. Fish, unfortunately, 1 point short of that perfect score. So, unfortunately, losing out on a point there. Otherwise, just generally some fairly close games throughout that week in Division 4B. Secateur, unfortunately, in the most unlucky position you could be, I suppose. 101 points behind Forzi in their direct matchup, meaning just 1 point short of a draw, at least still with a good enough score to get into the bonus point for the top 50% of the table. In week 8, we had Greasy and Forzi with their perfect scores. You can see them there in the table as well, doing very well. And those certainly helped, both coming away with wins there against Penguin and Apfeloxid respectively. Apart from that, just nothing really too surprising. Mostly just fairly clear-cut results with the winners of the games 3 to 4,000 to almost 5,000 points ahead of their opponents. In week 9, we had 1 draw between Hedikmi and Greasy Churchkella, both getting 2 points for their performances, pretty close to a 25k for Hedikmi, just 7 points away. Forzi, on the other hand, again with a 25k, the second 25k in a row, And coming off of that win against Secateur in week 7 as well, from there, he's been having a meteoric rise up the table, which has now ended in first place at the moment. Apart from that, in that week, again, not anything really too surprising, apart from maybe Bombadil winning against Upfloxseed with 20,220 to 20,107 points. So a very close win there, with two of the lowest scores of the week for Division 4B, 5B, the second and third lowest score there. As you can see, the table, it's kind of still possible all the way down to Upfloxseed to fight for that or those promotion spots. Of course, 2 direct promotion spots at the top, with third place going into a playoff against the third place of the other Division 5. And so, yeah, all of them still with a decent chance for that, at least, for that third spot down to Upfloxseed. Beyond that, Damir, Bombadil, Penguin, mostly looking at staying out of those bottom 3, of course. I think, Damir, Bombadil should be relatively fine for that if they can just get through Norway relatively unharmed and don't, make any unnecessary mistakes in the last map. And at the bottom, Teds, Cuckoos, and Treblyha fighting against those relegation spots. Still possible fully for all of them to get out of there as well. I mean, 4 points from 12th to 9th is doable, but it will certainly be hard, especially down in the bottom of the table. Points gaps mean much more because obviously, points are less frequently available for these players. All right, and let's take a quick look at the future as well. What's some interesting matchups for the next 2 weeks? We have Mr. Fish against Secateur in week 10 for this division. So second place against fifth place, as we said, both still fighting for those promotion spots. So a very important game there as well. For Mr. Fish, if he loses this one, I'm gonna say he's probably done. There won't be any way for him to get into the top 3 anymore. Again, unless something outrageous happens. We have Penguin against Treblyha as well. Kind of Treblyha's probably last chance here as well to get out of those relegation playoff spots against Penguin, who's not been having the greatest of seasons so far. Bombadil Edigme, another interesting game that I think 2 people, kind of on a similar level in terms of skill. Edigme, of course, having had a bit of a better season up to this point, but kind of for him as well, a must-win game. Just speaking in terms of if he still wants to get into those top 3 as well. And for week 11, we have not really any... Well, I say that. I just need to look down to the last match there on my list. And we've got Forzy against Greasy for week 11. So that's kind of the standout match of that week by far. It might be at a point where after this week, there's already nothing really relevant to play for in that game. If, Forzy gets enough of a lead, and Greasy maybe manages to stay away from those followers, let's call them, the people behind him in 4th to 6th. But again, I always kind of assume these town squares maps will be 25k, so there won't be any huge surprises, but, it's still definitely possible that someone just drops points, and if they do, the table can still get shaken up pretty badly. Now then, for Division 5A, let's take a look at week 7. In week 7, we had no perfect scores for Division 5A. We had 1 draw, Labengreb and Clemens, with both very, very good scores. Actually, the highest and the third highest score of the week, which is a bit surprising looking at their positions in the table. I mean, Laban in 6th place and Clemens in 9th. You weren't really expecting those kind of performances out of them, but they've both done very, very, very well. Apart from that, again, no real surprises there. All of the matches kind of going the way you would have expected them to go, and none of them particularly close. Antoine Pignard with a little bit of a weakness there, just 22.8k. But luckily for him, enough to beat Corgi by about 300 points. If he'd played against most other people in the division, that would have been an unfortunate point loss there for him, likely. But as it was, he will keep those 3 points on his side. For week 8, again, nothing really too surprising for a lot of these, but there are some interesting results in there. Clemens, for example, beating Anonono. That's a very interesting result, very impactful as well. Clemens, before those 2 weeks, actually, had, 5 points less, obviously, before week 7 and 8. We'll talk about week 9 as well in the second, where he's picked up another 3 points. So he's made 8 points in the last 3 weeks and has really catapulted himself out of those bottom 3 places into currently safe position. I mean, it's still very precarious, but for the moment, he's good. And yeah, apart from that, also, Antoine Pignard losing the game against Soundbite, who's still only down there in 11th place. So that, the almost point loss from week 7 coming back to bite him here with a decent score on his behalf for 24.5k, but Soundbite just coming in with a 24.8k, making that win happen and keeping himself at least with hope alive to staying in the division. And then in week 9, we did have one perfect score for Antoine Pignard, so kind of recovered from those 2 less amazing weeks and getting a 25k in Eswatini. Very nice for him against Cephalin. Important game as well, as Cephalin, you can see there in the table, pretty close to him. Apart from that, good scores by Fondolat and Laban Greb, who ended up with a draw, 24.9k for both of them, the second and third. Actually, no, the third and fourth best scores, as Danny has just kind of been steamrolling the division almost. He's had 1 draw and 8 wins. A little bit unexpected after his last season, where he's shown some promise in some of the weeks, but was overall just a little bit not ready, perhaps, is the right description for his performances in Division 4 last season. But this season, he's going for it, and so far it looks very, very good for him. As you can see in the table, he's still leading 2 points ahead of Antoine, 3 points ahead of Anonono, 4 ahead of Fondolat. So down to Cephalin is sort of the range here where people still have a chance to fight for at least maybe that 3rd spot. And the direct promotion spot for Danny is looking pretty likely at this point. The 2 players who will still have their red card matchup to go in this division are Corgi and Clemens, which of course is great for Clemens, who after that amazing recovery during those last 3 weeks is now looking pretty good, because at least he'll get 3 points in the Town Squares map. And, if everything goes nicely and he does manage a 25k, there's even 4 points on the table for him. He does also have to face Danny in week 10 though, so we'll see how he does there. Other interesting matchups that we have is Laban against Cephalin in week 10 for the matchup between 5th and 6th. Fairly close in the table still, although Laban doesn't really have much to play for anymore. So we'll have to see if he does well on that. I mean, it is his home country, so you could say that might be a little bit of an advantage in the first place. So it's a pretty difficult task for Cephalin if he wants to actually still make it to those promotion spots, especially because the other person who Danny still has to play is Cephalin in week 11. So tough matchups for him in those last 2. Apart from that, Lagege against GameFab, week 10, French Derby, 7th against 8th. Could be interesting as well, of course. Antoine Pignard against Anonono. Matchup for the direct promotion spot, likely. Whoever wins that is going to be in a massively preferred position. going into that last week, of course, as well. And in that last week, apart from what I've already mentioned, there's not too much going on there. I mean, there's some interesting matchups there, of course. We've also got Fonderlat against Anonono, obviously, to fight for that third or maybe even second spot. It all really depends on that matchup between Antoine and Anonono in this next week, in week 10, whether that matchup will actually still have any deciding factors. And then we have GameFab against Soundbite, which will likely be the last chance for Soundbite to make it out of those relegation spots as well, and obviously for GameFab to stay out of them to begin with. And yeah, so some more interesting matchups there. We'll just get straight into Division 4B with your picks for those 3 weeks.
So week 7 we had the worldwide map. These are always going to be very, very close. And well, it was no different here with Clemu versus Solar. And we actually only had one perfect score. On this side, this wasn't one of them, obviously, but one of the close ones, and well, just 1 point apart. So it does go to show how close some of these games can be. And I picked this one mainly because it is one of those kind of mid-table matchups, and it's one of those matchups that really can shake up things in the middle and make the difference between whether someone's actually in the fight. And I mean, in this case, it's a draw, which doesn't do all that much for them. Yeah. And then week 8, North America. We have Jake. He's from the US, so probably a great favorite there. And he did pull off a perfect score there, which is great to see. There were a few more in the division, but this is just one of them. Clemu just barely misses out on picking up a draw, which obviously is going to be great for Jake, but a bit of a missed opportunity. Just 15 points could have kept the draw in hand for him right there. And then finally in Eswatini, probably one of the more difficult seeds the season for Division 4. Like even Mongolia earlier the season was fairly easy. This one was a bit tougher, and it's reflected in the scores that we see right here. And again, fairly close, even though it was a win for Axel, being just not even 1,000, about 800 points apart exactly. Definitely means they were on pretty equal footing most of the way through that.
Yeah, definitely. For my picks for those 3 weeks, for the worldwide map, I did choose that one specific 25k that we did see on the worldwide map. As you said, the only one for the division, the only one for Division 4 in total, in fact. There were a lot of great scores. In fact, across both divisions, we had 6 draws in total, where players were very, very close to each other. And Ollie was the only one who managed to pull off the 25k. And even more unfortunate for Jack in this case, because with just 15 points behind Ollie, he wasn't even high enough for the bonus point for being in the top 50% of the week anymore. Unfortunately, I think he would have just been 7th, which that's got to sting a bit to only come away with 1 point after getting 24,985. But apparently the map was just fairly easy to get, so a little bit unlucky there for him. In week 8 in North America, I went for the perfect draw between Mr. Swiss Snow and Geofogger, both putting in an amazing 25k there. As you said, I believe that the seed was fairly easy. There were quite a few 25ks all across the division and the other Division 4 as well. But yeah, this one, the only perfect draw. A great performance from the two of them. And then for week 9, Eswatini, again, the only 25k in Division 4B for Ollie, who's been having great 3 weeks for himself, to come away with quite a lot of points there. He did win his week 8 game as well against Axel. So that's pretty much, how many is that? Is that 10 points for him? It's quite a lot either way.
Pretty much, yeah.
So yeah, just fantastic games from him. A bit unlucky for Varum, who had, I believe, the third highest score in that week in Division 4B and doesn't come away with more than 1 point there, but that's how the cards come sometimes. And yeah, still a good performance from him either way. So looking at the table now, what we can see here is you smiling from the top of it with 24 points. I've kind of mentioned it somewhere in the previous shows this season already, how in the past seasons you've always kind of had like this really good start to the season and then you kind of tapered off towards the end and just lost out on those promotion spots every time. But it looks like this time you'll be pulling through, right?
Let's not jinx it. We still have 2 more weeks to go. So, anything could happen. And Ollie is closing in on me pretty quick with those brilliant past 3 weeks. So, he's definitely going to make it a bit of a challenge. And, I will say, I thought it was all going wrong in Eswatini because I messed up the first round. And it did take a bit of a miracle for me to stay up.
Yeah, so
I thought that was the beginning of my downward spiral, but I've held on for at least another week.
apparently
So
not yet. Next week against the Norwegian in Norway, maybe. We'll see about that. But yeah, so far so great for you. And then an incredibly close fought battle in the mid-table. From 4th place from Solar Sensei to 9th place Klimu, everyone on 16 points. And while all of those positions are completely irrelevant, whether you're 4th or 9th, there's also only just 1 point to Axel in 10th and just 2 points to Mr. Swiss Snow in 3rd. So realistically, everyone from 3rd to 10th can still end up either in the promotion playoff or in the relegation playoff, and it wouldn't be a surprise at all. So there'll be some really, really high pressure on these players in those last 2 weeks, especially because Norway is always a bit of a gamble, I feel like, because quite generally as a map, it so often depends on which direction you go because there'll just be no information in one direction at all. And even the other direction might just not have any information, or you'll need to travel quite fast for like 3 minutes to get somewhere. And then Town Squares of the World at the end is also something I'm really interested in to see how that goes. Because, I mean, I'm expecting probably about 50, 60 perfect scores across all of the divisions in that week. So it'll probably come down to time on a lot of them. And there'll probably be some hearts broken based on a couple seconds here or there. And that would be really interesting. And especially to see how these players, as I said, perform under that pressure that they might have. Where, like, if you know, and that's especially true for easy maps like a Town Squares of the World. Because if you're playing a hard map, it's kind of like, well, I just gotta try my best and we'll see what happens. Town Squares of the World, you kind of expect it to 25k, and you know that if you miss 1 point, you're probably gonna end up with 1 point in that week for a draw and nothing more. So that's an interesting situation these players are put under.
Yeah, for sure. And it's an even better map to have in the last week because that's basically the one that's going to make or break it. A bit of a shame that we didn't have it in week 10 actually, because then you'd have draws all over, and then it's the last week that decides that mid-table scramble. Let's say. Yeah, I do think it's going to make for a very interesting division right here with everyone so close and everything to play for in these last 2 weeks. Unfortunately, the other and the Sotomo are basically out of it at this point. No, they don't even have a way of getting out.
Yeah, they're having their own little battle for who goes down directly and who will end up in the relegation playoff against 10th place in Division 4B. So there's still something to play for the both of them. But, kind of not going so great for them so far in this season. But yeah, let's look at the future and those, this time only 2 more weeks until we finish the regular season and go into the playoffs. So tell us, who did you pick out for your matchups for weeks 10 and 11?
So I'll start with week 11 because I basically alluded to it just a second ago. But funnily enough, the Andrea and Zotimo are playing each other in week 11 on Town Squares of the World. So, we'll see if they manage to pull off a win or not. Because in this case, it could actually make the difference between one of them getting a chance at beating a relegation battle. Um, and so it'd be really interesting to see that match. And it's a bit of a change from everyone fighting for the top spots. In this case, it's a battle to stay in Division 4 for next season. Um, so excited to see that. And on the flip side, for week 10 in Norway, we have Ollie versus Swiss Snow. Currently, the people who are second and third on the table. So for Ollie, it's a chance for him to kind of build up a gap behind and kind of ensure that he has no way of slipping below on the table. And for Swiss Snow, it's a chance to maybe make up the gap and um, get Ollie down. Maybe if these are my 2 bad weeks, it's possible for Ollie or Swiss Snow to make it into that um, uh, confirmed promotion spot, and this is basically going to decide who it may or may not be.
Yeah, surely a matchup that you'll be watching with a keen eye, just because, of course, if Mr.
Mhm.
Swiss Snow manages to win that one and you win your week 10 matchup as well, that could easily put you in a position where you're already safe before week 11. So I'm sure that's the scenario that you would prefer.
Indeed.
And yeah, of course, the week 11 matchup, they're also really exciting to see. What I picked out for those 2 weeks were the week 10 matchup between Jack and Sola Sensei, which, first of all, is just a really high class matchup to begin with. Really interesting to see. And then they're also 4th and 5th currently in the table, where, obviously, as we said before, 4th to 9th all on the same points, but those two have the highest total score as well, which is why they're 4th and 5th. So, obviously, in a tiebreaker scenario at the end of the season, they're in the best position. So, if Mr. Swiss Snow drops his game against Ollie, not Ollie, Ollie, in week 10, that's the prime opportunity for either one of them to jump in and steal that 3rd spot from Mr. Swiss Snow. So that'll be really interesting to see as well. And in week 11, I went for Ollie against Clemu. Again, just a nice matchup. I don't think there was anything particularly too interesting in that week for me, apart from obviously the 11th against 12th matchup that you picked. I was mostly just, top of the table against someone lower down. Obviously, the points difference is not super big, but yeah, just again, high class matchup. I think both of those can easily 25k the town squares of the world map, as long as there's no complete weird location in there somehow. And yeah, it'll be a decisive game as well. Probably for Ollie, his last chance, I guess, at the end there to get into that first place. And he'll probably have to. Well, it depends on how week 10 goes, but it might put him in a situation where he'll have to take some risks and just, making sure that he is in the top half of the table based on time, assuming that more than half of the table will 25k that seed. So, that again can put him in some high pressure situations where he might drop some points if he's not careful. And yeah, Clemu, of course, 9th place, just 1 point ahead of the drop. Also an important game for him. Well, he'll want to perform really well. Now then.
Yeah.
Oh, you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to Division 4A, the other side of Division 4, of course, with your picks for week 7 to 9.
Yeah, so for week 7, my pick here is Morica versus Seb Kirst. One of the few matches that didn't end in a draw for the week, as we said earlier. Worldwide map, one of the easier ones, and with world map scoring the way it is. Um, this is one of the few matches that didn't in one of those, and it was still very close. Seb winning in another one of his great performances. Just missing out on the perfect score by probably one round right there. But Morika's score isn't bad either, and it's just a bit of a shame that it's not a draw, I guess, but that's how the scoring works out. And then for week 8 in North America, we have Lucan Compras versus Xander. And in this case, this is one of the few draws that week. I say few, there's 2 out of 6.
Yeah.
So not that small a fraction, but yeah, this one, I'd say to some extent it's a bit of a luckier draw on well, both their sides, but more so Xander because yeah, it, easily with a slightly worse guess on any of the rounds, he could have lost the draw, and I think that that's something that will help keep him in the mix for one of the top spots in the division.
Mm.
And yeah, another thing about week 7, just go back quickly. Also another one because they're Seb and Mark are both um, contending for the top spots. Uh, anyways, back down to week 9, Eswatini. I've Seb again with one of 2 perfect scores.
Yes,
No,
with Ollie,
I'm
Ollie the other one in the other division. Yeah.
right. Okay, yeah. Um, so yeah, one of 2 perfect scores in Eswatini, so I couldn't um, leave that out, and especially important because it was a win against Biquet, who is at the top of the table, but this becomes one of only 2 losses for him so far, and it's really going to help Seb's chances of potentially unseating Biquet, or maybe even helping Sheldon's chances of doing the same. But at this point, any win against Biquet helps bring Sheldon, Seb, and potentially Xander and Morica into a sort of better competition against them.
Yeah, we'll look at that in a bit. But before we do that, my picks for those 3 weeks. For week 7, I've chosen the game between Xander and Dromi, which was a bit unfortunate for the both of them as, well, they had a draw, which is nice, but they only got 1 point each for the draw because neither of them managed to end up in the top 50% of the table. I think Xander might have, again, just been in 7th. Dromi a bit further down with his 24.8k. But yeah, still good performance from both of them, but not quite enough for more points, which is hurting them a little bit in the promotion battle. For week 8, I have picked Alfie against Seppo, kind of both fighting against relegation down there. Again, we'll see in a bit in the table, but a really crucial win for Alfie there as it put him ahead of Seppo in that fight against 12th place, I guess, with a 23k against a 20k and a bit by Seppo. And for week 9, Eswatini, as you mentioned before, I think for Division 4B, the Eswatini seed for Division 4 was definitely the most difficult one out of the Eswatini seeds across all the divisions. However, yeah, as you also said, Division 4 has been treated very nicely so far with seeds this season, so it had to come eventually. And there it was. And despite that, some very, very good performances from Luton and Wakelock. And we've got another Wakelock win here that, comes every so often. And very crucial for him as well, especially against Luton, as we'll see in the table now, because it puts Wakelock out of the relegation playoff spots entirely and bumps him up into 11th, just 1 point behind Luton.
And he's still got a bit of an upward battle to stay out. If he has another bad week in one of these last 2 weeks, he could go right back down. But having a bit of a gap down is good, and these Wakelock wins are few and far between, but you got to savor them while you can. But yeah, at the top, it's there's still a close battle. Obviously, not quite close a battle as 4B, but still a very interesting battle nonetheless to see who might pick up those promotion playoff spots. I think Biquet, even though he's only got a 3-point advantage, is probably all but confirmed to take the confirmed promotion spot. Um, there's obviously a chance he doesn't, but for the most part, I think Sheldon, Seb, Xander, Marka are just trying to play for the playoff spots,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
yeah, and that's going to be a very interesting battle to watch over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, Piquet is not the kind of guy I think who will drop points in a world map at the end in week 11.
Yeah.
So I believe as long as he doesn't completely bomb Norway and Sheldon somehow manages to pick up a perfect score somewhere in there, then I think he should be fairly safe. Yeah, interesting position for Dromi and Danny Blondes in the middle of the table there, where they're kind of both not really playing for anything anymore. I mean, Dromi has 5 points to third place, Danny has 5 points to 10th place. So as long as, again, nothing goes majorly wrong there, they should both be fine in the mid-table. Always interesting to see whether that just means people don't really practice anymore, or whether they take pride in, for example, finishing 5th instead of 8th. I don't think you'll need to practice overly much for town squares anyway. And Norway is a bit, Norway's its own kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you practice it a lot and it still doesn't
Mhm.
help you in the slightest. So
Yeah.
we'll see how they do. And we'll look at the picks of yours for week 10 and 11.
Yeah, so for week 10, I picked Xander versus Biquet. Obviously, this is one of the few chances they're there for one of the 4 trailing players in the division to try and pick up some points against Biquet and maybe try and unseat him from his spot at the top. It'll be difficult, but um, if anyone does it, it's going to be one of these 4. And so, yeah, Xander going up against Biquet, that's a match I'll be looking very forward to. And then for week 11, I picked Antoine versus Dromi, mainly because, as we said, Dromi doesn't really have much to play for in these last 2 weeks, and this is probably the prime chance for Antoine to pick up some points and get out of the relegation drop zone. And so, we'll have to see whether Jeremy actually decides to take a breather this week, or is dead set on making sure Antoine's down there in the drop zone.
We'll see.
There can only be one Frenchman in D4.
Yeah, it is actually an interesting situation in this table where Biquet is probably getting promoted and Antoine and Alfie are in the relegation zone. So if all of them go, then it is just Romy in Division 4A. And even in Division 4B, actually, it's just Rien de Rien, and he's in the relegation playoff zone as well. Let's take a quick look. How is it? Okay, there's a couple French people coming up from Division 5, so they'll be fine. But yeah, interesting games for sure. My picks for those last 2 weeks. Also Antoine Pilot, in this case against Danny Blondes. Similar situation, actually. Antoine is just playing those 2 guys that don't really have anything to play for in those last 2 weeks. That could be good or bad, because as we all know, also some people just play better if there's no pressure around, and they can just kind of chill and play their game, whatever. And for week 11, I've picked Xander versus, again, Danny Blondes. Because if Danny Blondes actually does lose Norway, I think he probably has a slight chance to drop down into the relegation playoffs. It's not big. He should be fine. But if he gets 0 points, I think it's still theoretically possible. So he'll hopefully just, be aware of that and get a decent score there as well. And Xander, obviously, as we saw in the table before as well, for him, this is also definitely a matchup that he needs to get at least 2, but preferably 3 points out of if he wants to fight in the promotion playoff zone. And I guess with Danny Bronze, if he can already manage to win his game in Norway, Danny might be in a situation where he also just, doesn't really have to care about the town squares map. And as a consequence of that, he might drop more than 100 points. I mean, it's a rarity on this map, but there are some locations in there that are definitely more difficult than others. And on one of those, I mean, Brazil, for example, is pretty heavily represented in that map with town squares all over. And it's definitely possible to quite easily drop 100 points in Brazil if you just maybe get a little bit unlucky with the direction you go, don't see a phone code, or even if you see a phone code, if it's like Bahia or Minas Gerais, big states, you can easily lose enough points to fall out of that range. So, might be a good position for Xander as well to maybe even pick up 4 points in that last week. So who knows? Could be some last second changes in those promotion fights. But yeah, then let's move on from Division 4 and visit Division 3, where you have picked the following for weeks 7 to 9.
Yeah, so for week 7, I picked the match between Tante and Lunacy. And this was the second closest match in the division that week. And, both of them getting really close to, a perfect score. There were none in this division. So this is about as close as you'd get. And unfortunately for Lunacy, he lost the match, and that's going to bring Tante closer to him in the table, as we'll see in a bit. But yeah, the two of them contesting for the top spots in the division means this is probably one of the most important matches that's happened so far. And then for week 8 in North America, I picked Pushtetli against Paulinho. Pushtetli picking up the only 25k in the division. And so, the extra point for the perfect score goes a fairly long way. And unfortunately, for Paulinho, I believe he had the fourth best score, but still one of only a few, 24,000 the division, and for him to go up against Shettley and unfortunately pick up a loss there, that's very unfortunate for him. And finally, week 9 in Espartini, I picked Hexalt against Espresser. And yeah, Hexalt put on a brilliant performance, just narrowly missing out on a perfect score. And yeah, it's just a very well-deserved win. And especially against Espresser, who's in third currently on the table. And so that's going to do wonders to get Hexalt out of the drop zone of the table, and a very costly loss for Espresser as well, as we'll see.
Yeah, but before that, of course, my pickups, what am I talking about? My picks for week 7 to week 9. You mentioned it being the second closest matchup of that week. And of course, what else could I do? I went for the closest matchup of that particular week. We've closed against Exalt. 23.3k against 23.1k, apparently the Division 3 seed for the worldwide map on the more difficult side. And yeah, Exalt has been having not the best of seasons. We sometimes see players just kind of running through the divisions, where they kind of get promoted from Division 5, Division 4, Division 3 immediately and kind of just go through everything like it's no problem. And Exalt was kind of a player that I thought could do that as well. But it does seem like it takes him a little bit of getting used to that Division 3. And to be fair, I also did see him getting a lot of insane scores on other division seeds for some of these weeks, but not quite the performance on his own seeds. So he'll probably be already looking for next season to kind of make that charge towards the promotion places and just kind of, comfortably stay mid-table this season. For week 8, North America didn't really go much better for him there either, as he gave Patriots his first win of the season. And if I'm not wrong, that is the first points that a player who has come back, who's played in Reddit League before and has come back to play in it again, has picked up ever. because some people have come back. Most of them either got red carded or retired pretty quickly again. Emily went like 5 games without picking up any points. So yeah, that's the first points for returning. So congratulations to Patriots. Who actually also managed to pick up another 3 points in Eswatini as well, which is very nice for him. But the game I went for there was, of course, the 25k for Lunacy, the only 25k of the week in Division 3 for him. And yeah, Nakiro, unfortunately, not quite up there. Does still pick up 1 extra bonus point for being in the top half. I think just barely sneaking in there. It might have been 6th or... Yeah, I think he's 6th with that score. So I guess he'll be happy to at least get 1 point from that matchup there. And what that means for the table is that we have Lunacy on top of it, I believe, for the first time this season, actually. But let me quickly check. Yes, it's actually been F Brasseur for 7 of the 8 previous weeks, and Tante snuck in there in week 7 to take it quickly from him. And Lunacy has now taken it to himself just before the end of the season to, that's the right time to do it. Yeah, but it's still, of course, very, very close. Tante just 1 point behind, F Brasseur on 20, Mikpiet and Pashtetli on 19, just 4 points behind Lunacy. So everything there is still very much open.
Indeed, and Lunacy has been on a bit of an upward chart, so he'll probably try to maintain that momentum. However, even one bad week, and I'm sure Tante, F Brasseur, they're going to be right there to snap it up while they can. But even like further down in the mid table, it is fairly close. Hexal through to about Pistetli. They still. Oh, okay. Well, at least Pistetli and Nakura still have some chance of maybe getting a promotion playoff spot. And Hexal don't have too much more to play for, but I'm sure they'll be, trying to stay as far away from the relegation spots as they can, and that's gonna make some trouble for any of the players above them who they take on.
Yeah,
in the end.
I wouldn't necessarily count out Exalt yet because he is someone who can 25k something very, very fast. So I wouldn't be surprised if he picks up 3 points in week 11, even with draws going all around. And if he can get a very, very good score in Norway as well, there's a little bit of a chance there for him. But yeah, of course, it's not huge. But also at the same time, of course, for Paulinho, Pastek, Freckles, and Patriots, it will probably be the bottom 4 places reserved for them. Paulinho, just 3 points behind. He still has a tiny bit of a chance. I don't know by heart who he plays against in those last 2 weeks, but there's some hope there. And the other 3 will probably be fighting for that last remaining relegation decider spot to get that additional chance of staying in the division. And it looked for a long time like Patriots was kind of dead set in that last place. But with those 6 points in the previous 2 weeks, he's also still got a decent chance of making it out of that, as we will move on to your picks for those last 2 weeks.
Yeah, so for week 10, I picked Nakura versus Exalt, mainly because it's a mid-table matchup, but as we just said, they do have the slimmest of chances of maybe breaking into promotion spots, and so they'll be giving it their all, and it's going to be especially important for Hexal because if he doesn't pick up a win, it puts him it puts him at risk of falling into one of the relegation spots if Paulinho can pick up a win or 2 in these last 2 weeks. And so that's going to be a very important game for him. And I actually had to pick 2 matches for week 11 because, we've ended up with Nakura Pistetli, both of them, again, trying to break into the promotion spots. And basically, whoever wins out of the 2 of them is going to make it in, assuming that, they're still within reach when it comes to week 11. And then meanwhile, Freckles and Patriots, they're pretty much guaranteed to be in the confirmed relegation spot, and so it'll just be funny to see, whether they've given up at that point or not, and um, it's just going to be uh, a match for honors. Who comes up 11th, who comes up 12th.
Yeah, certainly.
See at the season.
My picks for those 2 weeks, for week 10 in Norway, I've picked closed against Prestetli, against 7th against 5th, both still with that chance that we've been talking about for this whole segment. They can still make it. One of them can still make it, realistically. And yeah, whoever wins there is obviously going to put themselves into a much better position going forward into that last week, for which I've picked Fixtures against Tante. Of course, second against third on the table, which is actually the cut between the direct promotion and the promotion decider. So if one of them can pick up some really important points here and kind of dethrone, even though, second is not really on a throne, but whatever, the other, then they can really make their, end of the season a whole lot easier, with which I mean they don't have to play again and are just straight up promoted instead of having to go through another promotion decider. And we've also just kind of been talking about those big chances for anyone else, basically, of those 5th to 8th placed players. Of course, Fixtures in third currently, he's just 1 point ahead of 5th, so he's definitely also in danger of falling out of the promotion decider entirely if he has some less impressive results in those last 2 weeks, and especially in that last town squares of the world map, where you can expect most players to pick up at least some points there, even if it's just one for some of them. And we'll get into Division 2 straight away with your picks for the past weeks 7 to 9.
Yes, my first pick for the week 7 was Fungus against Guido Wizard. I think Guido could have won, but will be disappointed with his score in Cambodia. It was a weird point near the Laos border. And Fungus didn't get it either. And yeah, there was some space to win, and that's rare against Fungus. So maybe some regrets here for Guido.
Yeah, don't let yourself get distracted. He's misspelled both times.
Yeah.
just continue.
So yeah, Fungus is such a strong player that you have to take it when he leaves some space. And here, Guido just couldn't do it. That's, I think, some regrets for him. I don't know if you have some thoughts on this match.
Well, you'll just go through your 3 matches, and once you're done with your 3, if I've got something to say, I'll say it, and otherwise I'll move on to mine. Just continue.
So yeah, for week 8, Diesel against Fungus again, and there it is. Fungus lost. It's a great week from Diesel. Even if this was decided for basically every game, I think, with one round in Mexico, where we had only a village name and the state of Veracruz, which is very big. And I think we almost all randomly plonked somewhere in the mountains in Veracruz, except for Flipster, who got a 25k. But yeah, the difference on 1 point can be cruel for Fungus, but great quick from Diesel. And from week 9, Guido again, Flipster, really strong player. I think the best player from Division 2 until now. Double 25k, 3-point draw. I don't think that happens very often.
Yeah.
So it's like both of them won, basically. Yeah, great game for both of them, because there is not so much 25ks.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't happen very often. It will happen quite a few times, I imagine, in week 11. But yeah, great week from the both of them as well. And yeah, you mentioned that round in Mexico specifically. Difficult round for sure. Pretty much no one except for Flipster, as you said, finding it. So a little bit Not entirely random, but you know, it's always a bit annoying when the whole seed pretty much exclusively gets decided by one round, which was the case here. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think there you had to make the decision quick. That when leaving the village, I thought I won't find any more info and I'll just scan. And that's what I did quite early in the round. But I think some people maybe click and click and click just to get far away and found nothing and did not have time to scan either to find a good zone, good mountainous zone with lots of village.
yeah, that definitely helps. If you spend too much time going around, you probably, I mean, most people weren't going to find it anyway, but you know, taking your time to at least think about, you know, maybe a region guess in Veracruz could already help you a bit there instead of maybe just spending 20 seconds at the end frantically trying to come up with something and scanning at the same time, which is just not a great combination.
And Veracruz has a weird shape as a state, so you have
Yeah.
to find the little places with mountains in it, and that's not easy.
Yep. Moving on to my picks for those 3 weeks. Starting off with Flipster in week 7 against Ottawa. Great performance from Flipster there. On apparently not the easiest worldwide seed, as 24,970, of course, a great score, and the top score of the division as well. But even Ottawa, with his 24K flats, was still the 4th best score in the division. And unfortunately for him, yeah, against Flipster, not quite enough for a win there. Also, sort of a top of the table matchup between the two of them there, with Flipster coming out on top. Very important for him in the table. For week 8, North America, Ottawa just unfortunate. 2 weeks in a row, just up against too strong of an opponent. Although in this week, his own score was also a little lower comparatively to the rest of the division. I think probably around 7th or 8th in the division. And Cameron just barely pulling through and I guess making slight use of the home advantage from at least being from the US. Obviously, you know, I think there might have been like 2 or 3 US locations in most of those North America seeds, but yeah, just coming out ahead there. Well, as we said, probably also, you know, just decided by the Mexico round, but who knows. And yeah, for Eswatini, I went for Fungus against Samo. And yeah, Fungus in those last 3 weeks just not necessarily having the best of time. I guess he did win the week 7, so just in the last 2 weeks. 2 losses in a row for him. Unfortunate there for that Eswatini game as well. Just I think the 3rd lowest score of the division. Probably his worst week so far in Reddit League. And dropping more points there means that his position that he was in just 2 weeks ago in the table that looked fairly secure going into the last few weeks has kind of changed dramatically in a way, as we'll see looking at the table, where he's now dropped the lead to Flipster, who's now 1 point ahead of him. And even behind him, Ottawa, Guelo, RT Lewis, Samo, even you, it's all super close together.
Getting closer, yeah.
Yeah, I think down to, yeah, possibly even you, everyone still has a chance of getting into those promotion spots.
Promotion spots, I don't know. Playoffs, maybe.
Well, a playoff, what is a playoff if not a promotion spot? For one of the two. Yeah. And yeah, of course, on the other side of the table, the gaps are a bit bigger. WTF with 2 points after 9 weeks. Of course.
Even Diesel can save you, can get away from relegation.
Yeah.
With some good weeks. So
yeah, Diesel can still definitely make it. He just needs to catch up those 2 points to steal the Snick to get himself into the relegation playoff, and then everything can happen. But yeah, WTF. I mean, I think even theoretically, there's no chance anymore, as long as no one gets red carded for him to make it out of that last 2, I guess. Even if he gets 2 perfect games and his opponents, aren't in draw range, he can make 8 points, but even then his total score is so much lower than Steal the Snick that he basically requires Steal the Snick to get no points whatsoever in those last 2 weeks. So unlikely to happen there. Looking at...
Since there there is only one yellow card, and so
Yeah.
very low probability of red cards.
Yes. Looking at those last 2 weeks for Division 2, who did you pick?
I picked Ordopka versus Diesel because this is the last chance for Diesel to escape relegation, but Ordopka, playing Ordopka in Norway, Ordopka is from Norway, this will be very difficult, and Ordopka can hope to pass Cameron, so he needs a win too, and this will be a very important game for both of them. And week 11, I think this can be like a preliminary playoff round, because the one who wins will be in the playoffs. They are, I think, of the same number of points.
Yes.
Yeah, 18 points for both of them right now. So, yeah, basically a playoff game before the playoffs.
Yeah, it's of course not necessarily guaranteed that, whoever wins will be in the playoffs. Maybe there are some scenarios where neither of them could end up in the playoffs, no matter how that game goes. But yeah, likely if one of them does win the game, a playoff spot will be waiting for them for sure. What I picked for those 2 weeks is Guelo against Ottawa for week 10 in Norway. Of course, third against fourth in that week. Wait, did I pick? Or... I picked the same game as you. Okay, never mind for week 11. I'll pick something else in a second. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, yeah, week 10, Guelo, Ottawa, super exciting game. Guelo with some great performances so far this season. Ottawa also fantastic debut season in Reddit League for him. Will be a crucial game to decide those promotion spots. And I think kind of the game for the winner of this one to potentially even have a shot at making it to that direct promotion spot. And then let me look at the other games. What else is interesting in week 11? Not a lot, to be honest. Maybe that's why I picked the same.
Top of the ranking against the bottom, basically.
Yeah.
There's very few direct confrontations.
That is true. So I guess we'll just kind of skip out on it. on my part. I mean, of course, there's still a lot to play for, but most of it will be in, not in direct confrontations between the players. I guess if you want anything, no, it's just everything is just top against bottom pretty much. Yeah. And it is an interesting factor as well, just purely based on the town squares of the world, because that is kind of the map where, as sort of an outsider or someone who's, maybe got a little bit of less of a chance in some of the more difficult maps against some of the best players. That's kind of where you want to have the best players as your opponent, because you can at least, on town squares of the world, you can get a 25k. It shouldn't be a problem most of the time. So you can save yourself some headaches if you've got the big guys there, pretty much. So yeah, even
and you can't really train it, so it's not like some players are really good with some training, and on that week it will be like everyone will be at the same level at start.
Yeah, exactly. All right, then let's move on to Division 1, and let's hope I haven't picked what you've picked there as well. But yeah, let's start us off with your free picks.
Yeah, big win for Werdok against Bastel in the worldwide map. It keeps him in the running for the playoffs, and I'm surprised Bastel missed a Ukraine point by quite a lot, 80 kilometers, but quite a lot, because he's very, very good with phone numbers, and I think he may have missed or went in the wrong direction somewhere. Week 8, double 25k from two great players. Very bad luck for them to be facing each other that week, because there are only 3 25ks in the division. So yeah, that's bad luck for them. And week 9, you do the only 25k for D1.
Mm-hmm.
So great week from you. That's I think in D1 being the only one doing 25k is really special. So
yeah, it was definitely needed as well. But Yeah, when I played the seed, I wasn't entirely sure how it went. Like, obviously, I was very happy about 25K, but I wasn't sure about, the difficulty of it and whether, we'd maybe see like one or two more 25Ks or like seven more 25Ks. But I didn't think I was gonna be the only one to 25K that seed. So that was very nice. Like, even across every other player who's played the seed in different divisions. So yeah, I will definitely take that. And looking at my picks for those 3 weeks, I picked Shumi against Barry for week 7. Barry's kind of struggling a little bit in those past 3 weeks. We just saw his loss against me and Eswatini as well. So losing out on quite a few points there last season's winner. And yeah, against Chumi as well, kind of one of the players a bit further down in the ranking. Although, saying that for Division 1, where everything is so close together, doesn't mean too much. But yeah, it hurts his chances of retaining his title quite a bit. In week 8, I went for my game against Bastel, where I've just, had two very, very unfortunate rounds where if I solved either one of them, I would have won that game, but I just didn't. So I lost, which is how it often goes. And Bastel pulling through with a win there by about 600 and something points. And then for week 9, Eswatini, I went for the game between Basement and Stock, which also a very important game for both of them. Stock, as we'll see in a bit, now in last place, essentially, in the table, and Basement with those 3 points climbing up into the mid-table. If this game had gone the other way around, the roles would have been just completely reversed, where Basement would have actually been in last place if he had lost that game. So that's just how close this table is, as we'll look at it there, and you can see
And
20 points. Oh,
the
go on.
seed in Eswatini for D1 was very hard now, because I saw a lot of 15K, 19K.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not entirely sure where the difficulty for a lot of people came from, because unlike the Division 4 seed, where I know it was hard, I'm not sure why people struggled so much with the Division 1 seed. But maybe some people can explain in the comments where their problems lay. But yeah, when I played, I didn't like. I kind of expected, the worst scores would probably be, around the 21K, 22K marks, like people not quite finding one location or something like that. So I was very surprised when I saw like the first 2 scores or so, or like 2 of the first 3 scores that I saw coming in were like 14K by Barry and like 16K by Anna or something like that. But yeah, somehow people just were struggling with Eswatini quite a bit, surprisingly. But yeah, table very, very close. 20 points for Pav in first. 12 for Stock, but 14 for Shumi in 10th. That's still, everything can change here. Absolutely. The total scores are also not super far apart.
Yeah, and we have to note that Shumi and yourself will play Emily in the coming 2 weeks. So
yes.
that's guaranteed victory.
Yep. Me, Norway,
Which
and
for the
Shumi in
relegation
week 11.
playoff will mean a lot of
Yeah.
of points.
That'll be very interesting, because that means the people that, either way, Stock is in a pretty unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have it very, very tough if he wants to come out of those relegation spots. But it also has some other interesting implications, because it means, the people down there, or, down there in quotation marks, are kind of Anna, Barry, and maybe Basement, who have a little bit less points than the 5 people ahead of them. Which, is also definitely potential for some very interesting relegation playoff deciders. I don't want to be the person who plays a relegation playoff decider against Anna. Or, last season's winner, Barry. So I'll just try to not end up in there. And commiserations to the person who does. Unfortunate. And yeah, so for those last 2 weeks, you picked these two matchups.
Yeah. The first one, Werdog versus Barry, is because Barry can pretty much ensure staying in D1 with a win, and Werdog has to win to stay in the playoff race. So this will be very tense for both of them. And the last one can be a decider for title and relegation, Bastel against Stock on the last week, with both of them having to win, basically.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, pretty much everyone has to win every game in Division 1 here. It's just, with it being so close together, it's insane. Like, I mean, even people like Anna in 9th place still has a good chance of making it to top 4. Not, not the best chances, obviously, because there's 8 players ahead of her, but I wouldn't be surprised to say it like that. So that 2 weeks before the end is crazy. And the picks I went for are Bastel against Renata in week 10 in Norway. Bastel in 2nd currently, Renata in 5th, just separated by 1 point. So another pretty crucial game for the playoffs to get to the semifinals. I think if Bastel manages to win that one, he should be pretty safe. And for Renata, obviously, that's a very good opportunity to make some ways into those top 4 as well. And then for the last week of the Division 1 season, the regular season, I picked my game against Pav, who is currently leading the division. So a pretty interesting game as well. Although with the Town Squares map, again, we're just kind of expecting 25Ks everywhere. So for this last week, especially in something like D1 as well, I think it'll just be pretty similar to Ireland in that it'll just be time-based. We might see a few people dropping some points here or there. It depends on the seed, of course. Even in a easy map like that, there's still some hard locations in there.
Yeah, we can get a Mexican village somewhere. And
yeah, or like, there's so many Brazilian towns that even if like the rough phone codes, finding a town in one of the larger states is tough.
Yeah, this is
so
a map that sounds easy when you see Town Square of the World, but when you play it, it's very, very random.
And most of the time it is actually easy, but sometimes it's not. And you don't want to run into any of those locations, but we'll see how it goes. And of course, for me as well, with that free game essentially in Norway against the red carded Emily, that still opens up a possibility, not a huge possibility, but a small possibility for me to maybe even make it to top 4. But it'll obviously rely a lot on people's results around me and obviously how I do in that map as well. I've still got a 25k too, otherwise there's I can forget those playoff spots. But yeah, that will do it for this week's this 3 weeks of Reddit League show, I guess. This Reddit League show week, no, whatever, that'll do it. So thanks everyone for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys again next time. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Bye.